Well, welcome to step 6 of 7 steps to financial freedom. My name's Josh. I'm one of the pastors here at Lifehouse, and we're just so excited about helping you win with money and do life God's way in your finances, getting to a place of financial freedom. So, we're going to have a look at step 6, stewarding God's blessing today. And this step is about continuing to do life God's way. So, we've got a plan for our money. We saved a beginner emergency fund. We're doing life God's way. We're paying off our debts. Remember that the borrower is slave to the lender. We've got a full emergency fund. We're starting to invest for our future, for our kids' future. And step 6 is we're going to look at things like housing and different things like that, some of these bigger ticket items. So the first thing I want to say today is you can pay off your house. So many houses, when you get a loan, when you get a mortgage, it's still a loan. Now, we didn't address this in step 3 because it's such a big loan. It's going to take a long time to pay off. In most cases, the bank will set the loan at 30 years or 35 years, something like that. Now, that's okay. It's a fixed rate investment and it's a long-term loan, but you can pay off your house loan. So any extra money you have after investing and savings, you can put extra on your house and pay off your home loan ahead of schedule. And that's going to allow you to build more wealth in the future without a house payment. So a home loan is still a very large debt, but it is a debt that needs to be paid off. So how do we do this? Well, we need to live within our means. Many people these days don't use a lot of common sense around their money, either living from week to week or paycheck to paycheck. But God, I believe, wants us to live within what we've got so he can bless us with more as we do well. So if you buy too much house, what happens is what was supposed to be a blessing actually may not become a blessing at all. And if you buy too much house, well, sometimes people, I want to tithe, I want to give, I want to be generous, I want to invest for the future, I want to save, I want to do all of that, but I don't have any room in my budget. Usually the number one reason is the rent expense is too big or the house expense is too big. And so we would recommend make sure that your monthly repayments or your rental payments are less than 25% of your income. I'll let that sink in a little bit. Maybe you say, hey, I live in a big city and I have to spend 50% or 60% of my income on my apartment. Well, I would say, do you need to live in the big city? If you've got a job and you can't afford to pay, you have to pay 50 or 60% of your income on your house, it's very tricky to pay for everything else if 50 or 60% of your paycheck is going to your house. So maybe you need to live a little further away for the time being until you can increase your income. Or if that house is too much, maybe you need to consider a more reasonably priced house for now and move into that dream house in the future. Interest rate. Should I do a flexible interest rate or a fixed rate mortgage? Now, this is not written in the Bible. But however, in the culture and when the Bible was written and when Jesus was talking about in the Old Testament, when Jesus talked about money, the interest rates are fixed. They are set per year. They're not talking about a flexible interest rate. In fact, this is a relatively new concept that the banks have introduced, trying to get more people to borrow more money, is setting the rates lower or be flexible. This just means they can change from year to year or at any time. This is okay. It may not be bad when the interest rates are low, but if the interest rates go up higher, they will increase. The bank will often try and lend you more money and will give you a flexible interest rate because they may make more money in the long term on that. So you have to know what you're willing to borrow. You have to know what interest rate. You have to do your homework and don't let the bank tell you how much you can borrow or the bank tell you interest rates. No, you need to go into that meeting knowing what you can borrow and knowing what's good for you. Proverbs chapter 24, verse 27 says, put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. And after that, build your house. So Proverbs 24 very clearly says, get everything ready, get your job ready, get everything looking good, get all of your ducks lined up in a row, and then build your house. Get everything ready first and build your house because you don't want debt to move into a room with you. You don't want repayments. You don't want other things, disaster to rent out a bedroom in your house. No, you want to move into your house with freedom, in a good place, with peace in your heart. So Let's do a deep dive into housing. So fixed rate versus variable rate interest. So a variable rate interest rate is lower, but it may increase in the future. Personally, I don't want to worry about this. I don't want to go to bed. Oh, something's happened in the economy in the world. Oh, is my housing rate going to go up tomorrow? So personally, we have a fixed rate housing loan. So fixed rate means it's set for the entire term of the loan. It may be higher, but you won't have any trouble sleeping at night, no matter what the economic situation. In 2007, 2008, there was a big economic downturn in the world. And what happened is it meant that the interest rates went up in many cases across the world or in different areas just before that. And when that happens, if you're used to paying a certain amount back on your house at a 1% or a 2% interest rates, but suddenly the interest rates jump up to 4%, all of a sudden, many people couldn't afford to pay their houses anymore. And so they stopped paying their houses. And as many people did that, it created a domino effect and collapsed the economy across the world for those number of years. So when the interest rates are variable and you buy too much house because you can afford it on the variable interest rates, but that interest rate goes up, suddenly you get stressed, suddenly you get worried. So a fixed interest rate is going to be less worry and less stress. In 1973, in the USA, inflation tripled from 3.9% to 9.6%. So imagine your house repayments all of a sudden almost tripling. Maybe you're paying $1,000 a month on your house repayments. All of a sudden, imagine that went up to $3,000. For many people in that year or that time, they lost their house because they were on a variable interest rates and they could no longer afford the new repayment. So I want to encourage you, have a look at repayments, variable interest, whatever you decide to do. Know that you're going into this, know the risk. For me, for us personally, just fixed interest rates. It's not much more, but there is a lot of peace of mind and that's worth it. Now, renting versus owning. So in any situation, renting a house, owning a house, do the math for yourself. Generally, it's found it's better to own if you're planning to live in that city for the long term. If you're thinking, oh, maybe I'm going to move cities next month or next year, don't buy a house because there are fees associated with real estate and taxes and different things like that. But if you do buy a house, rather than just paying rent to someone else, essentially you're paying that rent to yourself because you're paying it to the house in the form of equity and you're building up equity instead of giving money to someone else. So you can think of buying a house. Yes, maybe the value of the house increases, but you're actually paying off the value of the house. So it's almost like forced savings. So instead of paying $1,000 to rent and you just never see that $1,000 again, when you pay $1,000 into a bank loan for your house, that $1,000, yes, there's some money there that's for interest for the bank, but then say there's $800 or $900 that actually you're paying to yourself in the form of equity. So over time, you're actually saving that money in the future. You may pay that house off and you own that asset, or you may sell that house and there's all this equity of savings that you've been paying off for many years. So buying and selling does have fees. So unless this is your job, unless you're an expert in this, you probably don't want to be buying and selling houses often because you have to pay the fees when you buy and when you sell. Investment properties. So last thing on this step, investment properties. Dave Ramsey recommends, and he's a multimillionaire, owns many properties, many houses, has a great company, teaches people how to get out of debt, a Christian man and a great company. I recommend looking at Dave Ramsey's products, look at his things that he's got. He recommends pay off your own house first and then use that money to buy an investment property. So he recommends don't take out a loan to make an investment, but instead buy what you can afford with cash. And so if you've got a vision for property, once again, do your homework. He recommends invest in more traditional investment options like mutual funds. Pay off your own property. Once that's paid off, then look at other properties that you can buy for cash and treat it like a flywheel that's going to grow and grow and grow bigger. And just like the Bible says, and like a lot what Dave Ramsey says, is don't jump ahead. Don't skip the steps. Don't jump into something because you may miss out on the blessing that God has for you. But once again, do your homework in this area. We can look to experts for advice, but in the end, we have to make the decisions for our own. So he does recommend, once again, paying off your own house before looking at investment properties. And once again, some of the disasters around the world concerning economic downturns and different things have been due to people owning multiple houses and not able to pay off those loans when there's a slight dip in the economy. So we want to do the right thing for our family, the right thing for our age, and the right thing for our stage. So invest wisely. Look at property. Should I be renting? Should I be buying? Maybe you want to talk with some other people in your Connect group or your coaching course or your pastor. Just how are other people doing? What have they done in your cities? Because it's going to depend from city to city. But in general, we find that buying a house and getting some land is really just a big blessing from God and a bit of a milestone in your life. And so if you're on this step, you're looking to buy a house, come on, let's do that with God's blessing. We believe it's going to be a blessing to you. And hey, come on, let's get a bit of our cities and claim it for God. And hey, we're here for the long term. And personally for us, Yuki and I, when we bought a house, we were probably 3 years into our marriage or something. We had a healthy savings, we're investing, we were in a good place. We didn't have any debt at that time. We'd paid off student loans, and buying the house and our apartment in our case has just been such a blessing to us. Instead of putting that money into rent every month, we're able to actually pay that money to ourselves through equity. It's going into the home, and the house is of good value, and we're growing that month to month. It's actually a joy to pay off the house every month. And of course, we may, sell that apartment and buy a different apartment, but we're doing things God's way, I believe, and we sleep easy at night. So really, I encourage you. I believe God's got that for you. It is possible to buy a house. We're hearing so many good stories of young couples or young people being able to buy a house, step into the promises that God has for them, and great blessing when it's done God's way. So you can pay off your house, get your outdoor work in order, as it says in Proverbs 24:27, before committing to it. It's a big decision. Have a look, fixed rate, variable rate. But let's be stewarding God's blessing concerning the housing area. And if you don't have a house, well, you can jump on to step number 7. If you do have a house, let's be working step number 6. Let's be faithful, investing, saving, giving, being generous. Let's pay off our house, and then we're going to hit step number 7. And so can't wait. So have a look at this step. Once again, talk with the Connect group or pastor or course leader, coach, if you've got any questions about that. And we'll see you next time for the last step of financial freedom, step number 7. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the final step of 7 steps of financial freedom. Today, we are looking at step 7, leaving a legacy. Step 7, leaving a legacy. And today we're going to be looking at building wealth and being incredibly generous to our children, to our church, to our children's children, leaving a legacy. It's going to be amazing. If you're new, my name's Josh, one of the pastors here at Lifehouse. And we're just so excited about helping you step into financial freedom, doing life, doing finance, God's way, being blessed and being a blessing to others. Step 7, leaving a legacy. Well, God has blessed us to be a blessing. This is the promise that God gave to Abraham. This is a promise that's on our life, that when God blesses us, it's not just for us. It's not just for our family. It's not just for us to hold, but it's for us to be a blessing to others. In the Bible, there's a famous story of the Good Samaritan. We know the Good Samaritan. He saw the man was injured and he needed help. And so he was able to take him to the local hotel and pay for his food and pay for his lodging. He was able to help because he had extra money. Have you ever thought about that? It's not easy to be a good Samaritan if you've got no money, if you've got no blessing to help people. Being a good steward of our personal finance is ultimately about blessing other people. What do we want to do in this step? Well, everything's all set. We've got a budget. We've got an emergency fund. We're out of debt. We're investing for the future. We're doing life God's way. We've got our house. Is that something we want to do? We've paid off our house. In fact, at this step, we're continuing to build wealth. We're continuing to invest, and this is the step when it's really about being super duper generous. So First thing I want to say today is give cheerfully. You know, it's a lot easier to give cheerfully when you have a surplus, and it's a lot harder to give cheerfully when you're in debt or always worried about money. 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 7 says, each of you should give what you've decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly, not under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And if you look back in your life, when are the times that you feel most glad about giving? Most cheerful? When are the times when it's easy to give for you? For me and our family, we love to give all the time. No matter what the situation, we're always going to tithe. We're always going to find some room to give extra to different missions projects and different things like that. But if in our life, the easiest time when we've found to give is when we've had a large surplus. If we've got extra money, we can give more. When God blesses us more, it's a lot easier to give a larger gift because we've got more. And this is true in life. And in step 7, without any debt in the whole world, including our house, investing for the future, saving, the kids are taken care of, everything's taken care of, insurance is taken care of. We are in a great place to give above and beyond our tithe. And I believe this is a place where God wants to get us to. Now, we can do this all along, but I believe step 7 is the time when we can really scale that up and giving even a larger portion of our income away to be a blessing. Step 7, this is leaving a legacy, is about changing our family tree. When we get out of debt, when we invest for the future, we're actually changing the finances of not just our family, but our entire family after us. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. You know, there's some people out there with a maybe perhaps what would be described as a poverty mentality, like we're supposed to be poor, God wants us poor, Jesus was poor, Christians are poor, poor me, poor you, poor, poor, poor. Oftentimes these people are quite wealthy, but perhaps just have not a great outlook on generosity or on tithing or on giving. Something has gone wrong in the journey. But Proverbs chapter 13, verse 22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. I don't know about you, but if I'm going to have to leave money, if I want to leave money to my children and to my children's children, that's going to have to be a pretty wealthy life. To have enough money that just that your children are taken care of, but their children are also taken care of. That's a very wealthy person. And I think this is going to be so awesome when we can get to this step. We can leave an inheritance to our children's children. And one day our grandchildren are going to say to their parents, what type of person was granddad? And they're going to say, he was the most generous person. He did wealth God's way. He maybe he didn't start off with that much money, but he built a lot of wealth over time. He gave a lot of money to the church. He gave a lot of money to the kingdom. He saw a lot of people come to know God. He was the most generous person I know. And in fact, he left a big inheritance, and he left an inheritance not just to us, but to you, but not just to you, but to your children as well. That's the type of person I want to be. I don't know if that excites you, but I'm very excited to live that type of life. So God says he wants to bless us that we can be a blessing, not just to the next generation, but to future generations. So building wealth. How do we build wealth? Well, with no payments to make to anyone and continue to build wealth, we're going to be able to live and give like never before. Our children and grandchildren are going to have a great start in life because we manage money well. We'll also be able to be a blessing at any time to anyone. Wouldn't that be awesome when we've just got money and today, who am I going to buy lunch for today? Who am I going to support today? What organization am I going to give to for missions? What's the best property for church? Because one day I'd love to buy a property for church in cash, or I'd love to be part of that building project, or I'd love to help this community. This is going to be an amazing place to be. Let's have a look at investing goals. What does it take to build wealth if we look at it in terms of investing and in terms of maths? Well, we did look at investing in a previous step, but if you invested $100 each month into a mutual fund returning on average 12% per year, in 40 years, that would grow to over $1 million. That's a lot of money. That's going to be a money. That's certainly going to be a great inheritance to your children and to your children's children. I don't know about you, but hey, if your parents or someone passed away and they left you with $1 million, you're going to think that person did pretty well in life. So that's if you invested $100 per month over 40 years. If you invested $1,000 per month into mutual funds, returning 12% per year over 20 years, just 20 years from the age of 20 to 40, that would also be $1 million. Wow. So there is probably a good path to becoming a millionaire is to invest $1,000 every month for 20 years. Now you may say $1,000 is a lot. I don't have that. That is true. $1,000 is a lot, but hopefully we can get to a place where we have surplus, where we don't have debt, where things are paid off. And especially once our house is paid off, then we should be able to allocate that amount of money for an investment. Maybe this is inspiring you. Maybe I should get a second job or start a business or start a side hustle to earn some extra income that I can save and invest and give. That's also probably not a bad thing to do. 20 years. Wow. I bet you wish you had learned this when you were 20 years old right now. If you had been 20 and starting to invest $1,000 every month from when you were 20, when you'd be 40, you'd have $1 million in your investment account. Pretty amazing. Now, here's where it gets really interesting is if you invested $1,000 each month into mutual funds, returning 12% every year over 40 years from age 20 to age 60 or 25 to 65, that would grow to become $12 million. Wow, that's a lot of money. It's a big number. It's a huge number for anyone in the world. But that's if you were doing things and you had debt paid off and you're doing well and you had $1,000 to invest and you were investing into a standard mutual fund that Dave Ramsey recommends over 40 years, you would end up with $12 million in the bank. And to me, that's a very wealthy person. That person is 100% certainly going to be able to be a blessing to their children and to their children's children. That is a very successful, a very wealthy person. And as we continue to put God first, as we continue to give above and beyond our tithe in being generous, that person would have blessed many people, would have been a big blessing to their church, and to leave that amount of money to their children and children's children, certainly amazing. Remember, that's only stopping at 60 in all of these examples. These days, we're probably going to live to about 70, 80, 90 years old, maybe even some people 100 years old. And that is just going to continue to compound. So you can see that compound interest in investing is really, really powerful, but it's important that we start early and not late. So when should we start? Well, the best time to start was yesterday, and the second best time to start is today. So let's start on these steps today. Step 1 is get a plan for our finance. And then step 2, getting a small emergency fund. Step 3, getting out of debt. Step 4, getting a larger emergency fund. Step 5, investing for the future. Step 6, talking about housing and stewarding our blessing. And step 7 is where we want to get to, is being leaving a legacy, building wealth, and being incredibly generous. So why don't you start step 1 today with the goal of getting to step 7 as soon as we can. And remember, as we do well with what God has blessed us with, He wants to bless us with more so that we can be a blessing to other people as well. That fantastic Abraham promise is so true in our lives. And God loves a cheerful giver. So I hope you're excited by step 7. Blessed to be a blessing, being generous, building wealth, leaving a legacy. Let's be changing our family tree. Well, so glad that you've joined us through all these steps 1 through 7. I hope it's been encouraging to you. Now, there may be a lot of information here. You may want to go back through the notes. You may want to watch the videos again. Definitely talk with your Connect group or with your coach or with a pastor if you get stuck on any of these steps. Now, the main thing is not to stop on any of these steps. Let's continue to go through all of the steps. And yes, getting out of debt, that's going to take some time, and paying off our house is also going to take some time. But let's continue on the path with other people. And for me, I'm also on this journey as well. Yuki and I personally, we're on step 6. We're committed to investing and saving and committed to paying off our house. And we want to get to this step 7 where we can just have no limits and be incredibly generous. Of course, we're generous in the meantime, but there's going to be another level of generosity when we don't have any payments to anyone. But what's helped us get there along the way is, of course, our encouragement of each other if we step off the path sometime, but also our encouragement for other friends who are also in this journey with us. And I tell you what, this course, I've never had so much feedback about people saying, well, I'm so glad I know this. I kind of wish I didn't know all this. Now I have to get things right. But I'm so glad that I could start today and start getting things right in my life. And so just wanted to encourage you around that. Let's spend the time to get things right, do things God's way. I'm sure God's going to see that. It's going to be a blessing, not just to you, but to your children and to your children's children. Let's leave a legacy and let's change our family tree. Well, have a great time, guys, in this step. Let us know if you have any feedback or questions or stories. We'd love to hear from you as well. And hey, God is with you on this journey about being blessed to be a blessing to others of financial freedom. Awesome. Well, have a great week, and we'll see you later. And God bless, and we'll see you next time. Bye.